Thank you all for being patient. All right, here we go. And we'll take a moment to center and connect. So wherever you are, maybe plant your feet on the ground. And we'll take a deep breath in through the nose and hold it and let it go. We stand here ready to be inspired and to speak our truth and to be present as we are surrounded by God, the good, the omnipotent, and so it is. Amen. Okay, so we got a lot going on. So here's our agenda. First off, we're going to start with some intros and then hellos. And then
we're going to go into do some quick group agreements so that we understand the container that we've put together here.
And we'll go over our goals for the session. And then we'll talk about our crowd share document and kind of get into that.
And then we go into some Y.O.U history that sort of helps set the stage for how we got there. And then we introduce Reverend Shad, who will explain the UWM 500 vision.
And then we're going to go into what 500 by 90 is, and then breakouts. So an overview of how that's going to look, and then closing and final announcement. So here we are. Okay, so first up, introductions and hellos. How we're going to do this, because we have a lot on our agenda, is when we call your name, if you could respond with an emoji, or you can introduce yourself in the comments. So first off, if you're a former or current Y.O.U-er, if you could put an emoji into our chat, and then current and former sponsors and parents and consultants. I realize that now that everybody's just putting emojis, but I want to honor all of you who are here, not knowing how many people would be here. Having a chance for everyone to introduce themselves seems a little time consuming, but we do want to honor all of you for being here. All right, so welcome staff and volunteers from Unity Worldwide Ministries. We have Julie, who is the International Youth of Unity event agent. I believe that's your formal title. And also Rachel Gaither, who is staff, the Next Gen coordinator. And we have some volunteers from the Alumni Network, and that would be myself and Linz and Aiden. So pretty excited to be here. Okay, so next up we have our group agreements. We spent a considerable amount of time working on these so that we could really create a container that we feel like could handle the work that we're doing. So we want safety for everyone, emotional safety, authenticity. We want to be real, and we want to be nice.
Yeah, so the way we're sort of seeing these is, that we start, the reason we're here is because we're curious, we're eager to know more about the situation at hand and how we ourselves can participate in it. We're brave, willing to confront hard truths. Sometimes looking back at history, we have to be able to accept that some things might have not have gone the way we wanted to, and we have to be able to look at those straight in the eye. We need to be able to create a sustainable solution, something that will continue to be productive even in the future, well past these meetings that we're setting up. And in terms of the space we're here, when we get to the group shares, that we really want it to be balanced so that everyone gets a space to share a little bit and everyone does some listening as well. So those are the first set of the group agreements. I'm going to pass it to Betsy for the next set.
Okay, so assume positive intent, be kind, we're all here to help. A little bit, this is here because sometimes when we look historically, it's easy maybe not to do that. So we want to definitely do that. Exceptional. We share a common culture, and depending on what region and what chapter and what time frame, all of our experiences are exceptional. So we want to come with an attitude of sharing. And with that, we want to honor all Y.O.U expressions and variations. And finally, autonomy. Can't create mandates. This was one that was really important because it's important that we understand right now that unity churches, unity regions, and unity worldwide ministries are all autonomous, meaning they are all their own entities. So we cannot tell anyone what to do. We can't create a mandate. And this is, and we're not really, despite potentially having feelings about this, we're not going to debate that here either. We're just going to understand that that's how this is. So that is how that works out. So here we go. We got our goals for the session. And
awesome. We're going to sort of quickly learn about the Unity Worldwide Ministries 500 vision. We're going to explore Y.O.U history through the lens of patterns. In addition, we're going to introduce a crowdsourced document where we're going to share our insights from this session and beyond, and that will be a way that we get to go into these specific topics of the group work we do later. And a lot of that work is around identifying and understanding the patterns and barriers that are either support or inhibit the success of Y.O.U, and how we can create support ideas for moving forward, with the goal of creating a sustainable direct volunteer space for international Y.O.U, something that it could use, and we may have people that want to do that. And the goal to create support ideas for understanding how to keep this going forward in a way that sustains itself autonomously with the resources it needs.
Right. And really, that means that in some ways, when we're creating support for Y.O.U, we understand that everyone has autonomy over themselves, that these entities do, and that they may not have any more resources than our creativity, which may be enough, but just understanding that is important. All right, so we have a crowdsourced document, so I'm going to go ahead and send out the link in our chat for this. If I can find the chat.
Well, Betsy's doing that. I'll sort of break it down. Basically, there are pages. There's a header at the top, which could allow you to connect to any one of the pages of the crowdsourced document from any of the other pages. We know it may be a little confusing that all these separate documents sort of exist, but we tried to make it so it's easy to navigate from whichever page you're on to get to any of them. And we'll dive into those with the activity in short order.
There is a section for all of them. Sorry, I think so many screens open. It's hard for me to figure out where.
Awesome. And so one of the ground rules for this document, as it says in the slide here, is that it is good to add information to this working document, but there's no need to delete or edit anyone else's text. So if you're going to go in, feel free to add whatever you like, but we're not going to be deleting other people's things because we need to get all that stuff out in order to share it.
Okay. All right, and here is the link to that document. And it has sections for everything that we'll be doing. And you can also, if you would like, this document's gonna live beyond us, and all of the stuff that people have submitted already isn't in here yet, but will be in here. So there's a lot of great data, and we'll have time to submit this, or excuse me, we'll have time to work on that tonight. Have we seen Shad?
Yeah,
even though
Shad's
we're
here.
supposed to do history, or we're a little off on time, can go ahead and let Shad go, because that's where we are time-wise, and then we can do history.
Awesome. You should probably close your presentation and pin Shad, maybe.
All right.
Shad's looking very mysterious as well.
Some great lighting. I love it.
Well, I'm at a hotel room, so I've had to just rig this little thing out of a lamp on a shelf here to make any light happen. So It's what I got, but it is kind of Halloween-y after all. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about where we are. As many of you probably know, I grew up, born and raised in Unity, went through the entire youth program, president of my youth group, Y.O.U mega fan, and had the transformational experiences that many of us had in the Unity Youth program. I went on to start to work with youth again at Uni of Las Vegas. I got back involved in being a sponsor for the youth program, YFM area of that church. Eventually got onto the board, became the minister, got ordained, yada, yada, yada. Here we are. I'm the executive director. That's how quickly it happens. You just got to watch out. Stuff starts flying. So I brought that life experience to UWM with me. And I knew that these principles I have found through my work with youth are so much more easily absorbed by youth than they are by adults. I've done work with youth and I've done work with adults, and it is so much more difficult to get these principles into the consciousness of adults because there's a lot of baggage that has been built up over decades that you're now working against. Where youth come to it somewhat as a clean slate. They have their experiences, but they're still formulating their ideas, their beliefs, and so you're getting in at the prime time to shift a life and create a new experience for an individual that will last them a lifetime. We never forget our experience with the youth program. Even those that don't wind up in Unity, they still draw from that in their conscious or subconscious way. So we knew this is incredibly invaluable. And I was of the generation in Y.O.U where we had 450, maybe 500 youth at the Y.O.U event. And that is a crazy, powerful experience. Just an awesome experience. And many of you probably had that experience either as a sponsor or there as a youth. And when we thought a lot about what's happening with the youth in our ministries today, one of the things we started bubbling to the surface in these conversations was that the Y.O.U event was sort of the upside down pyramid, the tip of the upside down pyramid that supported the rest of the entire youth programs at all the ministries. For me, my brother is 6 years older than I am. When he went to Y.O.U and he sort of came back just with that wild eye, that was insane look on his face, my sister saw it, who's 3 years older than me, and she was like, oh my goodness, I got to get to Y.O.U. And then she went, and then I saw it, oh my goodness, I got to get Y.O.U. And the whole youth program was charged to get to Y.O.U. And so if we can get that energy back into Y.O.U, that event, and the whole youth program, of course, but for some reason, I believe that that event creates the spark that lights the flame for the entire youth program. Because those individuals go back to their ministries and that energy now permeates the ministry. So as soon as we thought about this, we put it as a part of our strategic plan. We have to get individuals back into Y.O.U, these young adults, which means we'd have to help with the cost, because we know that the cost had increased. So we immediately started a youth education fund that we could use to offset the cost of Y.O.U. I was donating money, and I still donate every month money into those funds to help offset that cost, because we don't want to see that be a restriction, because we know that can be one of those restrictions. And we made this long-term plan to try to get youth back into the program 400 or 500 in 4 or 5 years from now. And we made a layout to how we're going to do that. But that's sort of where I didn't want to take control of this thing. I knew it had to be crowdsourced because I did not have the solution. We had a plan. We knew it. We had to do in the next few years. But my vision was that people would bubble to the surface that have ideas, have thoughts, have skills that I just don't have. And this is just answered prayer. I mean, it just, when it came out, I was like, oh my God, it's happening. You put this out in the universe. I had no idea this was formulating. Next thing I know, I get a slide deck sent to me, and it's like, well, where did this come from? What is going on? This is so awesome. I'm pumped that we have these individuals coming together. This is beyond what I could have imagined, that I don't have to sit here and try to think tank this out with just my leadership team or my staff. We have these amazing minds across our movement, and now are going to help us do this. So I want to thank you so much. This is beyond a blessing. This is just so amazing. And you all that are helping to put this together, I'm just, obviously, I'm bubbling to the surface with energy like I just came back from Y.O.U. So one of the things, so you talked about the autonomy of the ministries. And that is something that we're working with all the time at Unity Worldwide Ministries. Even if we have something really awesome, we want to get out to them. They are autonomous. So what we try to focus on is how do we make something so inviting that they can't resist becoming a part of it. We don't want to force anything on anybody. But we do want to do something that when the ministries get on board with that, those ministries succeed and all the other ministries go, what is the special sauce you have? And they say, well, we jumped on board with the program. And they go, all right, we're in. And really we start to focus on our early adopters. Who are the ministries that are ready to dive in and help us? And sometimes that's the 20%, the 80-20 rule. You find 20% of individuals, 20% of an organization are early adopters and they're ready to jump in and take off with something. And when you put your energy behind them, they help pull the rest of the 80% into the direction you need to go. So that's kind of how we do things at Unity Worldwide Ministries. We're not trying to catch everybody because it's just too difficult. It's just too many people involved. If we can get something that's really awesome and enticing, it's an opt-in experience that you want to be a part of, then we support those early adopters and we really give them what they need to thrive, knowing that the rest are going to start to come on board without us having to put all the effort in reaching everybody. So that's where we're at. We know something went off course. Somewhere in the late 80s, 90s, early 2000s, something went off course with our youth program. And for me personally, I don't, people say the youth have left Unity, and I don't think that's the case. I see it actually as the opposite. We left them. When they were starting to shift, when they were looking for something different, when they were doing things different, we left them. We did not go with them. And so what we find today is what I see as a disconnect, which I'm sure all of you see as well. If we don't actually match the needs of the youth, we become irrelevant. We can try to match the wants, but wants come and go. We all know wants can be fleeting. They might be a week, they might be 2 months, whatever they might be. But a need never goes away. When we're fulfilling someone's need, now they're truly dedicated to what we have going on. So it's finding what does the youth need. It's not that it's so different than what they've always need, but when we did match a need with a platform now or a conduit for getting it to them, that's where I think we lost our niche. That's where I think we lost our relevance is we have that need. We have these principles. They need that. But the conduit and the delivery system got off course. So I know you guys have probably 1,000 ideas that are 10 times better than anything I have. Just wanted to share where my head is at. I'm super excited. And so that's how we came to where we are today. Unity Worldwide Ministries, we're committed to this. We've got staff members working on this with you all. There are funds that are starting to grow to help support this. And I talk about it as I travel around with the ministries, because just about every ministry I see says, Shad, where did the youth go? And part of my message to them, which might be counterintuitive to what you think is, we need to decide which ministries should be going after youth, because not all of them can. Not all of them are well situated to go after youth. And we could be putting energy behind ministries that are just too detached from the opportunity of youth to really make this turnaround in time. And for them to put the energy behind it, they might have an older demographic, they might be in an area that's mostly retirement. It's not realistic for them right now. But what we can do is look at the ministries that are situated to really start bringing youth back, to really start engaging with youth and put the energy behind them. Some people have lost their billing. They don't even have a space for youth. So it's time to say, all right, you've got something else you might need to focus on, but there are ministries that are poised and they're ready to make happen what we need to happen in new and innovative ways that we may not even imagine. Let's put the energy behind that. So that's what I've got. If anybody has a quick question or comment, I'm happy to listen to that. We got like 4 minutes left in the 15-minute section I had.
I just want to thank you for being here and sharing that, Shad. That was really, really, it's great to hear where you're coming from, and I can hear your energy and love for it in your words. So thanks for sharing.
My pleasure. Yeah, my daughter just
Shad.
Y.O.U probably, she's about 2 years ago now. So I got to see her go through that process, and it was her not being able to go to have the 400 youth experience was hard for me to watch, especially during the lockdowns and everything. Everything was just, that was hard. And she had heard my story. So we got to do something. We just have to. Got to get that energy back because it's just so vital. So thank you all for what you're doing.
Hey, Shad, it's Ed Rosequist from Unity Renaissance in Chesapeake, Virginia. I had a group of 14 to 16 3 years ago, taking them to Raleigh. and I've got a group of 0 today. Significants now are all working on weekends. They found jobs during the shutdown. Discouraging for me, but it's really kind of an insight of exactly what you're saying is, how do we hook them back? What's the ability to do that? I always saw it as they want to have connection, not just spiritual connection, but a spiritual connection with others. And finding the nucleus and getting a good nucleus of young people together that's willing to lead that forward is such an important process of what we see. So I just see the need of how do we get our message out a little bit more, but really, the message of how do you connect, how do you share, how do you help each other as they're transiting the teen years. So my input. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, if I had the answer, I'd give it to you. So I think this group is going to be working on that, and I'm looking forward to see what comes out of it. Yeah, thank you for being here, Ed. I appreciate that. Okay, I don't want to suck up any more of your time. Thanks for having me. And
it's so exciting that you're here. I was wondering if we could ask that you'd stay. It's a very short history. I believe that our history information has some of the information that you're seeking, and it's pretty brief. So, but if you have to go, we understand, and we'll get back to, we'll do history and then our breakouts. All right, so thank you also just for, it's exciting to feel like you're one of us. You're really, that's pretty exciting. So welcome and thank you. All right, so here we go. We're gonna get to history, and even just today, Lindsay and I were looking at this and pretty excited. All right, we're gonna start with the beginning. We've named all of the eras of history. 1936, 1949, that is the beginning. The first part of the week of conference, Y.O.U conference was advertised. First part was special unity classes. So these are listed as part recreation and part meetings and classes. And our initial material, so here we have a magazine, and this is also on our history page, which is history.youalumni.com. And so we had the initial material list a lot of stuff that lived through time. The banquet, the semi-formal dance, international officers, vespers, and discussions. It was partly youth-led and partly not. So also, the clip we have, the initial age range was 12 to 30. So that was a little bit different. This is our second conference. That's a picture of the banquet. That's 37, but anyway. And here we go, something we found out recently, that even at one of the beginning events, Charles Fillmore was listed at teaching classes at the 1941 event. So that's where we began. So it's pretty exciting stuff. All right, so the next era we are calling the post-war era.
Yeah, this is a time when we're starting to see regions develop, or regional activity among Y.O.U is starting to develop. The age range starts to move down. It's definitely moving into a more high school age. We think the concept of family groups started at this time at events, and Y.O.U had its own magazines. And it was really beginning to address some social issues that were kind of ahead of its time in a way.
Yes, you see the magazine there. All right, so this is 1960 through 89, we're calling the classic era. All right, so significant details include, there was African-American integration at conference, which is, the pool was integrated. You can hear this story on our YouTube, which is listed on our website. And Sheila Powell was elected the first Y.O.U African-American female president. And that was a time when the roles were really president and vice president. They're very expanded, their boardroom kind of roles. And then moving forward, this is conference 1976. If you're waiting for something to happen, you may have missed the point. That was the theme. So the conference photos, they became color after 19. And while hugging was important before, the 70s photos show touch similar to later eras. You can even see in this picture that they're all kind of holding hands. And events had themes, t-shirts, sometimes banners and mascots, specifically this clown. Okay.
Another thing during the classic era is we started to see more regional development from the regions of Unity and the Y.O.U scene. We have a Jackie Green here from the Northwest, that we actually had a regional consultant role begin to happen starting in 1976. This was also when some regional kids camps began, where Y.O.Uers would lead the kids camp in the Northwest and Southwest regions. And the regional events, the rallies, start to become a really big part of the lifestyle, of the Y.O.U, that it's not just the central conference now, there's sort of some intermediary events too.
All right, so now we're moving to what we've called the international era, 1990 to 2006. Y.O.U conference is so big, it requires a quota system. There's just not enough space for everyone to go. So Shad earlier was talking about events that had 400 and 500 people. 1991 at YMC in the Rockies had over 1,000 people. So it was so big, we had to leave the village. So that's kind of, exciting.
We also did international trips, like international teams would travel to outside the US to other areas where there were either unities or why I got to go to Mexico City on one of these trips when I was international. It was also the piece by piece program was sort of the way, the container for all of this. There was a piece by piece role and it was the piece by piece delegate role was created for international. And International Y.O.U was awarded an award from the United Nations for their peace work, and we went to the United Nations in New York to accept it.
All right, so events that had musicians and they became Y.O.U favorites: Carl Anthony, Leroy White, Mark Stanton Welsh. Y.O.Uers at the beginning of this era communicated via letters. I know that's my generation. And by the end of this, you're talking over email and then AOL instant messages. And really where we went with this is that the size of these events kind of created challenges. And now a short interruption from a Gallup article. U.S. church membership is down sharply in 2 decades. This article is written in 2019, and we can drop a link for you. But here's an important thing that the article states.
U.S. church membership was 70% or higher of adults going from 1937 through 1976, and it fell to 68% in the 70s through the 90s. And then the past 20 years, a full 20 percentage point decline across the US in terms of attendance. So we're going from a 70% of adults go to church to 50% or less, starting in about 99 and into 2000.
So here is a very handy graph that shows you same data. And we started our information Y.O.U started 1936, so 2 years right before this. And you can even see how it comes up, and then this is the 2000s. All right, so during the time of Youth of Unity from 37 to 99, 70% of Americans attended church, 7 people out of 10. But the drop between 99 and 2019, this went from 70 to 50% of Americans, or 5 out of 10. So in 2007, we moved to the piece by piece event, which is not this was the last, 2006 was the last conference. No one knew this was going to be the last conference, and the international officers planned the event for piece by piece delegates, and it was not open to Y.O.Uers. If you want more information, this is on our website.
And so the next year, there was, in attempting to fix the issues that had come up because of size, they did an appreciative inquiry, which brought together ministers, Y.O.Uers, sponsors, in the space of a summer event Again, they didn't displaced the summer event, and they brought people together at Unity Village, not for a conference, but for this appreciative inquiry. And while there were a lot of great ideas shared, and again, there's evidence of all this on YouTube. We've put together playlists of some of the history things, and you can see all the great intentions and great ideas. But what we know now is that there was not a lot of ownership and follow through from this time, and it wasn't open to everybody, that it was kind of a closed sort of situation. And we think that might have had an effect.
2009, it is called Y.O.U, Peace Ambassador Training, just for simplicity. We're calling it Peace Ambassador Training. It was not youth-led. And while it had sections about heart coherence, it was run primarily by ministers. It was not very popular. And once again, it was not open to everyone. And because of these 3 years, this is what we're able to see. If you were a freshman the year of Peace by Peace, you wouldn't have been able to go to that event. And so what we're able to see here is that in the span of a high school generation, we had 4 different events. Now, history tells us that Y.O.U is the event that is the next, generation. However, we did not know this when this happened. So if you were new to Y.O.U, you wouldn't have known. So because of the disruption of events, it created an entire high school generation that did not have the same consistency that the 70 years before it had. So when we talk about why did this happen, we believe this is a 70-year pattern disruption at the same time as a 20-point drop in church attendance. And so we call this period the breakdown. And you can see this is the last conference photo in 2006. And this is the first Y.O.U photo in 2010. The attendance is considerably less. And that brings us to the era of 2010 to 2019, which we're calling Y.O.U. This is a rebuilding after a breakdown period. Thank you, Shad. And Y.O.U did not have the same numbers as conference because now it's a whole new thing. This is also the first generation. I brought this up because I was a consultant in 2010. My Y.O.Uers always knew the 5 unity principles, but it was marketed. It was not a part of the general. While we always had principles, it's not marketed in that same way. Internationals are now indies and they're chosen by region. Some other important details of this era include
that people can meet through the internet, that whereas in order to see your friends in the past, you actually had to go to an event. Well, now you can Skype or FaceTime in between your events. You can you can make videos and share your experiences with people, and, could lead to more engagement as well. And then, social media accounts started, and, and then when handoffs to the next generation, maybe someone doesn't keep up the social media accounts. And it's a new era of trying to keep up communication and trying to show up where people are.
All right, so 2020 to the present, we're calling it COVID plus IY. Mostly because you can't really talk about a generation, but we had Zoom during Y.O.U during 2020 and then Zoom fatigue during 2021. We've seen rebuilding of regions and Y.O.U and events are coming back in person. So, and there's a lot of good things happening in the chat. So I want to honor all that, but this is, I believe, the end of our history section. It's been that's our journey here. This is the first time we had presented, and I have to say, it's a little bit more emotional than I thought it would be. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think until we put this together, that we realized how much we had learned and how much we knew about Y.O.U and the history of it. And it's really, I don't know, it's enriched my sort of experience now, knowing that I'm a part of something that has that storied history and how many people it's touched. And I think personally that this history piece is a really important part of how we get new families to care about unity and new parents to care about or not new parents, but parents of kids, bringing them to Uniteens and trying to be involved in something that has such a strong legacy. I think that the calling on this history part can really motivate people to participate.
Ed.
Yeah, I just want to bring up that I see Y.O.U. as the culmination of the Unity Youth Ed experience. And it's something that we really need to put some energy and some resources behind, because it's the end point of the kind of the schooling process for our youth ed. And I think it's something that we're really lacking as a focus area from many of the ministries. Thanks.
I agree that there's really something powerful about a program that creates an experience like Y.O.U. And it doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? Like, as much as, I put Y.O.U. on a pedestal, it does exist in concert with Uniteens, in concert with a younger program, with a larger ministry. And so, yeah, telling that whole story, I think, is pretty important. Betsy, are we moving into the group portion of this?
We are, but okay, so.
Oh, right.
Take a deep breath. All right, maybe we take a deep breath as a group. I feel very breathy. Okay, here we go. Take a deep breath in through the nose. And let it go. All right, so this all led us to 500 by 90, which is a 3-part virtual conversation series to support and empower the vision of 500 people at the 90th Y.O.U. summer event. And which this was really born out of time last summer at Y.O.U. and time with Julie. And that was pretty exciting. So, all right, so here we are. We are at What's Working. And now we're going to move into our breakout spaces. However, it seems that because of the amount of us, also thank you, Shad, for being here. All right, so we'll move into our breakout spaces. However, because they were kind of a small group here, I think we're just going to stay as one group so that we have, just for ease of use. So we will be using our group agreements, and we can pull out our crowd shared document plan. We said brief introductions, but we'll work as a group. But if you would like to do this not a part of the group, and you wanted to just like go off camera and kind of think about the questions, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. So here we go. Return on time. I'm not 100% sure. We're just going to kind of roll with this, and we will end on time. That's what's going to happen. All right. So our first section is about church. And we have 4 breakouts. Let me back up real quick. We have church, chapter, region, and international. So church is specifically related to the people, the individual church itself. So church can mean a lot of things, but it is the individual church, and the chapter that is in the church is a separate thing that we're talking about. Okay, so first off, so our questions here, and I guess we can just ask them and then we'll start answering them. And then I'm not in the crowdsourced document church section, but as we talk about these things, that's what we would want to be doing. So our first question is, what patterns does the church have that support Y.O.U? And the crowdsourced document, I know that it does have specific examples for this. So I will go over and pull.
Do you want to share the shared document on screen?
Okay. Okay, so some of the patterns that we have already identified, and patterns we're using in a positive way, meaning like, what are the good things that are already there? So like we had a 70-year pattern of supporting Y.O.U. What are the patterns in individual churches that support the church? So a long history of Y.O.U. in the church board supporting the Y.O.U. chapter, a strong youth ed department, strong unit teams, and a kids summer program. Those are ideas of patterns that we believe support Y.O.U. And then there's barriers, and then support itself. So since we had thought that we were going to do breakouts and now we're not doing breakouts, are there any other, I feel like one pattern, I'll say this and then I'm going to stop talking. One pattern that has come up in the document online already was in churches where you just don't have teenagers. So that would be a barrier. Okay. But that's a barrier that we've seen. Whoops. All right. So patterns that support Y.O.U.
And some chapters or some churches may have better and worse examples of this, obviously. I think some are more all pattern and some are all barrier, but more likely there are a mix in there as well.
I'm not clear what you're asking.
Could you scroll back up and go over your examples again?
So what we're asking is that the sort of three axes that we're considering with each of these examples is the patterns and or the good things, maybe the pieces of the system that should be working or can be working or we've witnessed working in churches. And then the next thing we're considering is the barriers, the things that we know aren't working. I feel like we may all be able to generate a longer list of that at times. And then the goal will be ultimately to also think in terms of those barriers, what kind of support can we create that will either bypass those barriers or, help us to the other side of them. And
can I ask why don't we want to go to breakout groups? It's like 15 of us. You could have at least 3 breakout groups.
yeah, maybe we do
I
that.
think because we could talk, because with all of us, at least with the smaller group, we can talk to each other. This way it's kind of like,
One big group.
that was just my suggestion.
No, and I would love to do that. I think Aiden had said he didn't think that we could do that with this version that we had. I thought we bought the fanciest kind of Zoom we needed, but apparently we didn't.
Got it.
Okay, I'm a control freak, so just understand that. I will back off.
We've all got a little bit of it, Linda. No worries.
And I've been talking a lot, but it's Ed, and I would say a pattern is that if you have juniors and seniors who have experienced the Y.O.U, have the Y.O.U experience, they help bring in younger teenagers to excite them about what Rally and Y.O.U is all about.
Solid example, Ed. That's great.
And I will bring up another pattern that developing church sharing between each other creates an intimacy of the group as well that they don't experience other places.
Sorry, my cat's meowing. I'm gonna mute myself now.
Trying to get some bullet points. Oh, we got some hands up. Am I muted? No, I'm not. Okay, yes, for Susan, go ahead.
Got it. Thank you. Ed had some great points earlier about things that caused a barrier. You said something earlier in reference to the pandemic and how many kids you had prior to the pandemic and what you had afterwards. What I have found during that time frame, and Betsy, I think you've heard me say this before on a call that we had once before, that Miranda's on this call too. 59 weeks we did Zoom calls during the pandemic, and we merged with other chapters to do that. And we lost a lot of kids because everyone was burned out by Zoom at that point. But now that we're back, what I love what Ed said as well is we were talking about it, and I've got new kids. I've got one kid who's probably been there maybe going on the 5th week, who's already going to Rally next week because of the excitement that's being talked about from the kids that have already gone to Rally. We started our first Rally last year. In November of last year was our first Rally back. So we had 3 last year, and we're starting our fall Rally again next week, as well as we had our Y.O.U event. So it's about connection. And once the kids really connect heart to heart in the groups that we have, like right now, I've got 12 kids that come. I don't have them all every week, but I've got about 7 to 8 kids every week, and I've got 7 kids going to Rally next week. And 1, 2, 3 of those kids are brand new that have never been to a Rally. Actually 4. So, I mean, the excitement starts to build once you start building that really safe, heartfelt connection in the groups that we are getting now. And we've been meeting outside in the parking lot. We bring our camping chairs every week and we have a beautiful labyrinth out there. So it's been just great heart connections, and they're safe connections. I had a kid who showed up not this past week, but the week before, and his grandmother came to me and said, he's really come from a bad background and now lives with me. And then he came last week with his sister. So, and he was excited to be there. That was his second week. So it's just like building that safe place. And when I said something to his grandmother about how he really just fit right in and talked the whole time, blended right in with the whole conversation and the lesson, and her mouth dropped and she was shocked. And I said, that's because we create such a safe place for these kids to feel like they can show up and be and speak from their heart. And he was so comfortable doing so. So anyway, that's the kind of space I think that we need to build as a group. And it's not just coming from us as sponsors, it's coming from the teens as well. So it's a beautiful connection that you see growing. I'm complete. I've spoken.
Thank you, Susan. Would Tana?
Hey there, Betsy. So nice to see you. Gosh, it's been a while. As far as a pattern, like Susan said, I also want to add to not only connection but that bridging experience. We just had Uniteam retreat, and they were all, I'd say 95% of attendees. There was 35 in attendance for Uniteam retreat, and 95% were newbies, new adults, and new Uniteams. So, you know, the great thing about being connected with Y.O.U is that I had Y.O.Uers that I had known since Uniteams that asked if they could serve those Uniteams. And I had 5 Y.O.Uers end up being family group leaders, because, I mean, it really was divine order, because there were so many new leaders, they would not have known what family group and family group material was, but these teens did, and how encouraging and exciting excitement they created, not only for Uniteams, but there were 4 8th graders that are going to be graduating in spring that are so excited about the future of Y.O.U and getting to go into Y.O.U in the spring. And I think, you know, it's not only the connection, but that bridging from, you know, having those Y.O.Uers extend that arm out and bring those Uniteams in such a inviting and welcoming and assuring way. Because, you know, I have a situation right now. I mean, we have 59 signed up for fall rally, and which is outstanding in my opinion. But we have a church that is really struggling, because the churches themselves, ministers themselves, are faced with, you know, 50% less or even greater income. And although they maybe in the past have had a strong not only Y.O.U, but youth program, there's no money to fund, and they're struggling to figure out a way to not only pay rent, but also support youth. And I have a church right now that, you know, I summed it up. It's going back to those basic unity principles, is that prosperity consciousness, and how can we, you know, make sure that the basic unity principles are instilled into our youth to practice those principles even in their affairs, so that, you know, they aren't fearful they are not going to be able to attend retreat and rally, but that how can we do this, and what are the different ways, and how can we tithe, even if we babysit and we make, you know, $25, well, that's $250, you know, and it just goes around and perpetuates. And so I just think that getting out of that mindset of when we get it back to the way it was, instead of owning where we are and how we can create new ways, inspiring ways, supportive ways, loving ways to enrich those that come before us, so they turn around and invite their friends and their neighbors or whomever to build those youth programs. That's where I see that growth is going to occur. I'm complete. Thanks.
Thank you, Rachel.
I've been kind of stuck on what Shad said, and when he was talking about, where do we start? And what was there for me is we start with the kids that we already have. We start with the young people that are already committed. We've got solid youth leaders. They're here with us today. And I think that as we continue to allow them to create what they want and allow them to create the experiences and, allow the leadership to guide those experiences to make them the most powerful and transformational experiences they can be, they will continue to invite their friends. And they'll continue to create that safe space and be like, no, this is our safe space. We're not, we don't do these things. We do these things here. And that's what creates the experience. That's what creates the safe space. And really, I mean, they got this. They got this. They've always had this. It feels a little harrowing as adults sometimes to hand that over, but really, what is it that has you keep coming back? And they already have that answer. They have that answer. And it's just a matter of listening and continuing to allow them to lead, and maybe continue to encourage the way that we've always gotten more Y.O.Uers, and that is to have them invite their friends, because the experience is so awesome. So, maybe we focus on that and have more events where they can bring their friends, and they can bring their friends without it being a super serious event, making sure that we have social events and service events, as well as the spiritual events. So that's all I got for now. I'm sure I'll have more later.
Wonderful. All right.
Hi guys. I don't know how many other churches do this, but this past Sunday we did a fifth Sunday at our church. And so we have the teens do the greeting, the ushering, the platforming, reading the meditation, the prayer, the opening songs, have them up in front of the congregation, helping lead things in the service. This is the first time we've done it since before COVID. So this gave everybody kind of a really good idea of, hey, we have youth. They need support. This is what we like to help with. We have a wide range of age right now, since I'm the only one over Uniteens and Y.O.U combined. But we have kids that are willing to get up there and lead the meditation and show the stuff that they've written. And we also had a lock-in the night before as kind of a fun way to get ready for being up in service, and to brainstorm fundraisers to let the congregation know, hey, we're happy to be of service, and also help raise money for the church and the youth department, so that way we can go to rallies. So I think letting the congregation know your needs is a big important thing to kind of put the energy that youth are important, because for a long time our youth was invisible. They didn't know that we had a teen department, and when they announced that I was the teen director, they seemed shocked. So I think it's important for your sponsors and leaders to let people know, let your congregation, your minister know that you want to be seen. You want the kids to be able to share their Y.O.U journey with people so they know that it's important and how much they're growing. So that way we get them to go to rallies. That's the end goal, right? To learn the lessons, do the activities, and then be able to go to a rally and make it all come true, what you've been dreaming of since you were in Uniteens. So that's my 2 cents on the whole thing.
Thank you, Jessica. And next, I'd like to introduce us all. Currently, I believe our only Y.O.U.er, our current Y.O.U.er, and Indy from the Southeast region. Lou, go ahead.
Hi, that was such a wonderful introduction. I'm gonna turn my video on for this. But I just want to say that Y.O.U is an amazing youth-led organization, and I've heard a lot of stuff about trusting teens, but there is also the adult factor or the sponsor factor. Well, you need to have adults and sponsors that have been to rally or to been to Y.O.U events and understand fully what Y.O.U is and what it means to the teens, what it means to have them. And when we went through COVID, teens weren't the only ones that kind of dropped out. There was a lot of adults, a lot of sponsors that also dropped out and kind of lost touch with churches, lost touch with Y.O.U and the rallies. So now we have newer sponsors, lots of new sponsors who don't fully understand what Y.O.U is, how we do things, what responsibilities they have, what rules they are required or expected to keep. Like, they have the same hard agreements as the teens. They're expected to do exactly what the teens do, have the same sacred space, have the same integrity, sorry. And I think that that is one of the most important things, is because unlike the teens, they don't have kind of other people that are able to be with them every Sunday and every event and tell them all this information, because they're adults and they're expected to know what's going on. We expect adults as a society to know what's going on. And they are the ones that parents and guardians talk to kind of get the gist of what Y.O.U is, what rally is. So they need to know this information. I think that was all that I had to say. I am complete.
Thank you so much. All right, so here's the challenge that we're at. Thank you so much, Lou. I really appreciate that. We have a lot to cover, so we kind of do need to move forward. But what we would like to do first is at least look a little bit. Okay, so we had 3 things we wanted. We've talked about patterns and barriers, but support. One idea I had was that we could create a guardian angel team, because again, we have to do things autonomously. So what kind of, to consult with local churches, that was an idea I had. But are there any ideas that we can think of, aside from presenting this document to churches? What could we do to support local churches? Hand was up first, so I'll say Ed, go ahead.
Hey, my hand was up to talk about the last 3 years of COVID are very similar to the 4 years that we've missed out on. You missed out on Y.O.U. So there's really some challenge around that. I would say one of the things you really use some support is, I lost all my seniors and juniors and they have gone away. So I've got just a few freshman teens in the church. What I could use is for regional reps or others to come to my church and have basically some type of connection with the real young people, along maybe even with Uniteens, to start bridging that gap of where the loss was. I mean, I had these the last 5 years from my chapter, but again, with everything that's gone on, I lost all that continuity, and that's basically been stripped away. So figuring out a way we could get reps, traveling to the different chapters to try to reinvigorate those kind of things would be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Miranda. Take it from here, Miranda, I guess.
Hi, so I've kind of two things that could help provide some support. So I serve as the youth director at Unity in Greensboro in North Carolina. I'm also the marketing person there. So from the youth director side of things, I can't get volunteers on Sunday from my congregation. I recruit them out of the nearby colleges and I'm training them, but kind of if there's any way to build some support around getting alumni who want to come back and serve as sponsors. I know there are a lot of alumni who left because of various experiences that were not super supportive for them, but building some encouragement to try to get alumni to come back, even if they don't want to sit in Sunday service, to volunteer with the youth would be great. On the marketing side, since a lot of Unities have older congregations who maybe are not super tech savvy, our young folks are on the internet, and the fastest ways to grow a social media following are to either have real in-person people that comment and share, or have money. And since I doubt many of us have marketing budgets, having some folks who just want to go and comment on church posts, particularly youth-related posts, could be really helpful in teaching those algorithms that Y.O.U is something worth sharing about. And my dog is trying to join the call.
Wonderful. All right, Rachel.
Okay, so I'm very excited that this came up, and I'm not going to use it for my plug, but I am going to say that we are working on an ambassador program for both Y.O.U and Next Gen that includes the possibility of young people traveling to local chapters to help lead events, to possibly help do some bridging with Uniteens, to help bolster any Y.O.U chapters or start Y.O.U chapters where they're trying to get things started with maybe just like one kid or whatever. And it's the ambassador program. And Amelia Cates and Emily Taylor and I and Linda McLeod have been working on this for several months now. And we're working on building and structuring that program. So that is a very real and present possibility coming out at the beginning of next year. And hopefully we'll get that rolled out. And like I'm open to any and all suggestions around that manifestation of an ambassadors program. So it also includes international stuff too, but that's one of the things is it's the ladies are very excited about, quote unquote, they think it would be iconic to help regrow and revitalize Y.O.U with the ambassador program. So that's all.
Rachel, where are you located? What region?
I'm in South Central, but I work on staff at UWM. I work with Shad's my work wife. Okay. So.
All right. A lot of stuff that was talked about for church would also relate to chapter. So keeping in mind, chapter here is defined as the local chapter in the church. Some of the patterns, and look, these may get, we're just trying to, find the best way to talk about this. All right, so some of the patterns that we identified for chapters were long-term sponsors, Y.O.Uers stepping up into leadership roles, Y.O.Uers that have been regional officers, annual events, fundraisers, fun events, regional and international events. When you have those, like every year we do a yard sale or every year we do this thing, and that's been happening so long that people in the church are like, oh, are you guys doing that thing again? Like that's the kind of pattern. Barriers, and again, we were talking about this. So, Y.O.Uers aging out, so teens are not available. Nobody having attended regional or international events for a while. I definitely saw that as a consultant in the 2010s, and no one attending or helping with fundraisers. And then in terms of chapter support, I'm just going to say all this and then we'll open it up and see what sticks. So I'm really stuck on this idea that we could create some sort of guardian angel team that could consult with local churches and help for chapter for assess Y.O.U readiness. I would also just say that in terms of like just throwing down all the crazy ideas, create a way for a national chapter system. I know that in New York City, there is a Girl Scout chapter, a Girl Scouts for homeless children. There's a Girl Scout, the virtual chapter for them. So is that something that we could do? We have a national virtual chapter. And is there a way that chapters could host their own 500 by 90 by 1, some sort of thing like this? That was another idea for support. So if you have stuff that, and you can also add directly to this document, but if you have stuff that you wanted to share, hands raised seem to work really well. Thoughts? Rachel.
Sorry. So that's actually one of the things that I'm looking at is next gen chapters being connected to the national level as opposed to individual ministries. So that may be something that we might be able to consider for Y.O.U as well. I don't know what kind of infrastructure we would need for that as far as supporting that, but I'm using the model of spirit groups, and we're going to try that out with next gen and see if that works. So
Ed.
You know, I've been using a lot of TED Talks for my lessons on Sunday in the past. You know, it would be really great to figure out a YouTube channel or something we could put together that would have truth talks, unity truth talks by Y.O.Uers that we could post, and then actually be able to, you know, again, bring those into the Sunday experience with kids. Because that really, you know, again, I think the stories, the sharing breaks young people out to actually allow them to have the same type of ability to share and be open with themselves. So that would be something I would recommend we look at as a national function that we can ultimately kind of put together and then use individually in chapters. Thanks.
It's simply something that I thought about too, was the idea that if you had a virtual chapter that was national, then if I was at home, I was thinking about it as a Y.O.Uer, like, you know, so the idea of having a YouTube that has that, although I will take this minute and show you our YouTube, which does have a lot of, there's a considerable amount of Y.O.U curriculum, or not curriculum, actually kind of curriculum. There's a lot more Y.O.U on YouTube than you would think. And it's not just like our awesome channel, but like if you look down, we made a bunch of playlists. So on one hand, we got playlists by each generation, 20s, the 10s, that's 201 videos just for the 10s. We got the zeros, the 90s, all the way back to the 70s, and even some stuff on the 50s and 60s. But even here, we got all of the regions have whatever videos we found. But here we go. This is 228 videos from live and regional international events. This is 40 different videos of Y.O.Uers leading or at Sunday service. We have 12 videos that talk about what Y.O.U is. It was something we all tried to do in the 2010s apparently, was we'll all just make the great viral video. And that's what those are. 31 things I considered Y.O.U commercials, 139 spirit sharing. And then this is Y.O.Uers just leading activities, and that's 29 different videos. So, you know, 17 joy songs. These are all just group photos. There's Y.O.U testimonials here because when we had to undersell this event, there's a lot of like, I had a great time. Like, anyway, some Y.O.U history, Leroy. Anyway, yeah, so at least a little bit of that kind of exists. But it could be more, I love the idea, the stories and the sharing that really does help Y.O.Uers. Thank you, Ed.
Betsy, my hand's up. It's a little dark,
I'm sorry.
but it's up.
I appreciate you telling me, Linda. All right, what do you got? Go ahead.
Well, you know, one of the things that I've been working on, I have a daughter, 2 nephews, and a bunch of kids, and not kids, they're actually young adults. They're between the ages of 22 and 35 right now, and they're here, but I can't get them to attend church. I can't get them to, you know, be involved in anything. And so what I would love to do is somehow, and we talked about it, Rachel and I, and have talked about it with the ambassador program is working to get small groups of them together, because they were like best friends, and they still are. They still get together and hang out and do stuff. So it's like working to get them excited about being and working together and get them back into the fun that they had at IY, and in the Southeast region we had Summer Connection. These kids, they are best friends with kids all over the world, and they go visit each other and do stuff, you know. So it's like, can we, part of it is we can get some of those back to start sharing the experiences that they had. And it's just like, what, how can we bridge the gap of these young adults that are out there? And I know one of the problems that I really work on is, one of the reasons I want to work with the ambassador program too, is they graduated from Y.O.U. and they dropped off the face of the planet. So what I would like to see is a program that they don't drop off the face of the planet, that when they graduate from high school, there is a place that they can go and stay connected. They won't, you know, they can't meet every Sunday because they're working now, but a way to get them reconnected to, to reconnect them to Y.O.U. And I think that's a barrier. How do we get those graduate Y.O.Uers who jumped off the face of the planet back into, they come back when they have kids. Matter of fact, I've got one that just came back. She's going to be the youth director at Unity of Tampa, you know. They come back when they have kids. Can we barriers get them back into unity, not, you know, somehow. Maybe create our own unit. No, I'm just kidding.
I have a support idea in response to that, which is some kind of outreach program that reaches out and meets them on their terms, and so instead of expecting them to come back to us, instead say, hey, what can I do for you? And I don't know who or how that program would come about, but something that's sort of like bridging the gap a little bit of some sort. Because I think that it's a lonely time after you leave Y.O.U. It is like maybe the loneliest of all the times. And so it isn't, it's not that you don't know you have people or whatever, but, you know, some outreach from some stable adults might be useful at that time. So that's my thing. Rachel.
I love the idea of the outreach lens. One of the things that I'm working on with the Next Gen program is to have a spirit group structure. And the nice thing about that is they can meet at any time. There just needs to be a group of 3 or more of them. And they can meet at any time around any topic. And I'm thinking that we can have regional and national virtual ones as well. And so it'll be kind of like the idea of like Al-Anon meetings or AA meetings. There's always something going on that you can go and join based on what your schedule is. There's going to be something going on at some point that you can join up with. And it is a matter of trying to consistently go to create that connectivity. But I like the idea of there being lots of little groups that they can connect to that keep them in the conversation of supporting and connecting them with their spirituality. And I love the idea of the outreach. I don't know what that would look like, but I love that.
I've got a question. Is that virtually?
It could be both. It could be either they could have virtual groups, or they could have in-person groups, or they could have hybrid groups, although the hybrid groups, they would need to be really intentional about the connectivity with that, because doing both is kind of difficult. But yeah.
Susan, go ahead.
Thanks, Betsy. I love what you said too, Linz, on that is having like a bridge to get there. I've had this conversation many times, Miranda and I've had this conversation. It's kind of like, you know, we have them from age 14 to 18 and it's like, see you, bye. But it's not. I mean, I stay in touch with so many of the kids, but you feel like it's like, they're not ready to go really out there yet, you know, because they've been in such a safe place in their heart for so long. And then all of a sudden it's like you expect them to go out in the world and just survive. And so to have that bridge, and I know that NGU is fantastic as well, but it almost seems like, you know, I don't know what the age group is for NGU any longer, but it's almost, I'm not sure that the 18-year-old that comes out of Y.O.U is ready to walk into an adult situation in the NGU world, because they're so safe in the Y.O.U world. I get very emotional speaking about that because I've been doing this for 18 years. And I have a lot of people, got Miranda, for instance, walked into the Y.O.U room at age 14, and she's now one of my best friends in the world. So you can keep those relationships going, but you know, how to keep their hearts safe. An 18-year-old that's not ready for the real world yet sometimes. And I love how you said that too, Linz, is the bridge. What can we do to support that? Kind of crying. Because I get very emotional thinking about all the kids. It's kind of like they're just here one day and gone the next, out in the real world. And are they really ready for that? Because Y.O.U has been such a safe home for so long, for so many of these kids. I'm complete. It's my passion.
I just want to say that to me, this speaks to something I talk about a lot. As somebody who grew up in Unity, we need a way to support lifelong Unity membership.
Yeah.
Because I'll just put that right here, because a lot of times we're supporting children and we're supporting the adults who come late, but a lot of times the people who are making the decisions for Y.O.U are the adults who come later, so they have no context on how to support this kind of ministry. And oftentimes, like, they're trying to be helpful and they say things that are oddly enough traumatizing, you know, like for I'll use myself as an example. It's very hard to be, it's very hard to stay. It's hard to stay in Unity and not leave. And you're often told to leave. Or I was asked when I was 25, are you a Y.O.U-er? Because I look young, which sounds fun, but it became a way to make me less than. So in some ways, I feel like I'm opening up a can of worms, but we got to look at this system that, you know, that makes children and Y.O.U-ers not full-fledged members of the church. So, like I said, I've opened a can of worms, but here we are.
No,
Sorry, Vicky, I opened it.
Yeah, and I want to add one more thing too, because it's kind of like, you know, it's like all of a sudden they're in Y.O.U, they go to their last summer connection, and then they go to IYOU. Some of them do, some of them don't go to IY, and then all of a sudden it's like they're the lost teams. There's like this next stage sometimes where they're forgotten, and it's not me that forgets them, but I'm just saying, you're right, Betsy, when you said that. It's like, how do these adults know how to speak to these teens when, you know, I had a teen a few years ago say, one thing that's so awesome about sponsors is you don't look at us like we're kids, and we don't look at you as adults. It's one heart's connecting as one. So that's what we understand as sponsors, that our hearts are connecting as one, and so many other people don't understand that. So they end up kind of getting thrown out there and not being accepted.
Yeah. I had one of our Southern regional kids call me about, she's 26 years old, 26. She had a friend that committed suicide. She had nobody else. I mean, at 26, she didn't have anybody. She felt she didn't have anybody to reach out to but me, you know, and that, you know, that's what I'm talking about, Susan. I feel you. And also, Miranda's here, and I'm going to say it. Those, when they start next gen, they don't feel like they need adult supervision, that they should have their own little group. And I think that first, the 18 to the 22-year-old, they need the adults in there to have the conversation. Maybe 25 and up, they don't need us. But that first, when they first jump out there, they need us as mentors, not as Y.O.U leaders and stuff, but as mentors that are there to support them with the conversations and stuff. That's just my view of the world. But we don't need the adults. We're 18 now, and I think they do. I think they really need them in the meetings, hearing the conversations, because we've been there. We're not going to be telling you what to do because it's your events, your activities, but we can be on the sideline to see as adults what these kids, or young adults, are walking through. So to me, that bridge to getting the youth in is having that group that keeps bringing them in, because they have that look forward to kind of, okay, when I jump off out in the world, there's going to be someone out there to catch me. So that's that chapter, that regional, that keeping it keeping it for them, keeping it live for them, at least until they're ready to move on. I'm complete.
Okay, so we do need to be wrapping up chapters, although this conversation's kind of gone in a bunch of directions. Miranda, what do you got?
So maybe if we could create another crowdsourced document of ways that chapters can help bridge the Y.O.U to adult. I know one of the things that came up was membership. One of the things we just did in Greensboro this year was we changed the voting age to high school, and our board had just never thought of that before. Nobody brought it up, and they were totally for it. So creating a list creating a document with a list of just steps like that that can be implemented at the chapter level.
Okay, that's a great idea. We can put that.
Love you, Miranda.
Yes. Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things we do the last couple classes, we go through our membership class for adults during normally our first 2 weeks in May. And then anybody that graduates is automatically inducted as a member of the church. So that's part of our graduation ceremony at the end of the year. I just would like to bring it back, though, to one point that I find it's interesting to talk to the teenagers, especially the younger teen, that in general, what I find is that, unity is a thinking one-on-one relationship with God kind of organization and focus. And that's really hard for teenagers in general to take on. Their friends in school and different places are going to a cookie cutter religion kind of church that if you do this, you go to heaven. And I think that we need to look at that a little bit different. And I do think it's a barrier to how we connect the spiritual side of our Y.O.U.ers to really have a true experience in Y.O.U. Thanks.
Okay, so we started a section here where you can talk about bridging the gap between the church and between church and the youth. So I wanted to talk about regions. However, we are running out of time, so I think we're going to go ahead and skip to international. And it's not that if you have thoughts that you want to share, we can look over actually, we'll take a second and we'll look at the regional document. And if you have thoughts that you wanted to share there, you can also share them on our website. But in the regional document, it's the same concept. What patterns, barriers, and support do you see? And something that's come up actually a couple of times by a couple of different people was that a consistent barrier for regions is board ministries who may not understand Y.O.U, regional board ministers. So the people that make up the regional board are made of ministers, and a lot of times they may not have Y.O.U experience, and sometimes that can be a barrier. So if you had thoughts on that, you can add that to this document. You can also submit it on our website. So then what we'll do is we'll talk about international. And I didn't really have a ton of patterns. I put 86 years of a summer pattern. I mean, we definitely talked about this in the history, but in some ways, in our barriers, currently event can only house a number of people who can attend the hotel at Unity. But what could we do internationally? Patterns, barriers, support. What are ideas that we might want to share specifically related to international and IYOU?
One of the things that we did as far as when there was a really large Y.O.U event going on, they had the girls at the village and they had the boys at a nearby hotel, and they had them bust in every morning and bust back to the hotel every evening. That's how they accommodated that many people. So that may be an option as far as the space, right? But that would mean that the funding would have to be there to do that. And that means the numbers need to be.
Yeah, it's like the whole equation. We have to get through the whole equation, and that is certainly one piece of it. But there's sort of a few steps we have to get to also. That Julie.
And when I was first presented with Shad's vision, or Worldwide Minister's vision of 500, I was going, and where are we going to house them? That was the first thought that came to my mind. But I'm like, you know what? If we're that large, we will figure it out. We've done it before, we'll do it again. My only thing is I don't want the event off grounds. I think it had moved at one point to where it was meeting at either a hotel conference center or a college or something. And I think that for the spirit of unity and all of that, I think it's so significant that it is there at the village. And so it's like, wherever we house people, we'll figure out a way to get it done. You know, we can, get the buses and, whatever we need to do. But I think the importance is just being sure that everybody is back on grounds for the actual event.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll have drones at our disposal at some point,
Most
I
families.
can give you an answer to that. We just did that. We had the People of African Descent New Thought Conference there, and there is a way to do it with the people off campus. Matter of fact, the 2024 Unity Conference is going to be on campus, and they're going to use our the way we did it we have 350 people on campus. I mean, at the events on campus, but we had them staying at all the local hotels, and those hotels worked with us and gave us rates that were comfortable to the Unity Hotel and some less than that. So that is not a barrier. That is possible. And I was the one who did that. So that is not a problem.
Okay, not to steal the conversation away, but were the hotels willing to offer shuttle service?
That is the one thing that we had to work on. And that's Unity's issue, not ours. So we have to work with Unity with that.
Gotcha.
All right, so
Can I ask one other question? Why when I was for the region, for the international Y.O.U.s, we had officers and the kids elected officers. I don't like this idea of somebody else electing the officers and those are the ones, only 3 that can get in. I think that the organization, the kids should select who their officers are. I've had some of the worst kids that I thought was in the universe. They were elected as a region. They became the best kids that you could ever have because all of a sudden they had the responsibility. The kids should elect their officers, period. So that's a barrier now that the youth do not elect their leadership team.
So it went from being in 2000, that was one of the things that happened at the appreciative inquiry. And my understanding is part of the reason, and it a little bit makes sense when you look at it historically, that we had 3 officers, 3 people for hundreds of kids. That's like one piece. And then another piece of that was that you didn't have, for example, like when Lynn's was international officer, one of his co-international officers, like one of the people in Indy with him, sorry to call you an Indy, Lynn's, but anyway, was from his chapter. So then you didn't get the distribution. So like in his case, he's from West Central. So you had 2 people from West Central from the same chapter, and then 1 person from Eastern. So what they were trying to do was create basically like 1 year, these regions get to have it, and 1 year, these regions get to have it. But the problem came in the 10s where some regions, because you're right, it became like the consultants choosing someone. Some regions would have it some years, some regions would have it others. At first, South Central was 2 regions, then it became listed as 1. And I am setting up for Julie because I think it is even different now, but giving you the historical, and now it's different.
Julie.
Yeah, it's up to the regions how they choose their international indies. Some regions, I think, in the past have had elections. I think that as time has gone on, it has been more of the regional consultant choosing. My only thing is whoever is coming as the international consultant, I want to be sure that whoever is coming is prepared and has some experience, has some leadership experience, because I don't know them until I start working with them.
It needs
And
to be
so-
an application process to be
So-
able to run. Yeah.
But it's up to the consultants in the regions how they choose. So if a region decides that they want to have an election, that's great, but there also needs to be that application process and everything else, so that the regional consultants are sure that the people running are qualified for that position. So that's kind of where it has gone in terms of how they are now chosen. In terms of, and I'm going to be meeting with the consultants in the next couple of weeks, and one of the things I'm going to talk with them about is how we're going to go forward, because this past year, it was supposed to be Great Lakes, Southeast, and Eastern regions with their indies represented. Eastern and Great Lakes had nobody to put up because nobody knew what an indie was. And so when they were asked, do you want to be an indie? What is that? You know, and so they didn't have anybody. And I'm so grateful that Lou from the Southeast region has great experience. And so she was ready to step into it. And same thing with Aiden Fallon from Northwest region. You know, so I've got fantastic indies to work with this year. Divine order, it always comes out that way, right? But I'm going to be talking with them about how we want to structure it going forward. So things are in the works. You know, things are percolating out there in the universe.
I wanted, Julia, you have a great comment in the chat. Part of the issue too is when things crumbled, the bylaws went away as well. That was definitely something that is 100% what happened. And part of that was, my understanding is that they didn't like, the business meeting was long and they didn't want to do that anymore. Also, I'd like to acknowledge Miranda's comment. I'll say this, when I was a consultant, I did have my region. We ran a virtual election and you had to fill out a form and make a video, and then like there's a whole thing to vote, and you know, for the Y.O.U. So you can, and that was the thing I thought about, like if you made it more open again and versus not being region specific, could you do something like that? Because that was one of the problems I noticed, was you had Y.O.U.ers who, some of my Y.O.U.ers when I was consultant, the timing of when their indie year could be might not be their senior year, might not be the best year they're available. So that's a consideration. So
I am always open to everybody's thoughts on things, you know, and one of the things recognizing though, if you bring me an idea, don't automatically assume my answer is going to be yes, but understand that I will take it under consideration, because I know that there are a lot of ideas out there that are great ideas, and I am open to all of them. And so if you have ideas about how this might look, let me know, jcore@unity.org, and I appreciate all the input.
all right, we got time for a couple of closing thoughts. Ed, go ahead.
Hey, just one thing, you know, I'm finding young people, you know, my young people want an experience. And, you know, it would be really interesting if we could get all the different rallies posted on when they're going to be, and different things from an international perspective, because I have had Y.O.U.ers in the past want to go to different rallies. And I don't think that's out of I think that would bring a lot of excitement into different regional rallies. If, again, from the Eastern region, you know, I'm in Virginia Beach, I'd love to go down to the Southeast and take a couple kids. I think that would gain great excitement around a rally, and actually be able to bring back something to our experience here in rallies of the future as well. So just a thought.
Wonderful, Ed. Thank you. Susan.
Thanks. I just wanted to add to, there was a comment a minute ago, and then also with Julie and Linda, I think it was you that said that you'd love to have people running again. In the Southeast, for instance, starting with two seasons before the pandemic, we only had 2 people running for the positions. So you could do a voting when there was voting for it and they were voted in, but trying to get the leadership built back up now to have people in those positions. Lou, for instance, was our Regie 2 years in a row because we didn't have anybody else to be a Regie. So, and was asked to come back to be a Regie the second year. So, it's trying to build up the leadership again, along with the chapters. I know the last call that we had, the conversation came up that there's so many churches that haven't even come back in person yet, that don't even have a Y.O.U program that's absolutely up and running yet. So it's rebuilding the whole process back again. And it's, it's working for us. But again, it's how each one's going to do that and how you bring the kids back into it.
And if I can just piggyback just a little bit on that, I saw both in the South Central region this year and then at IY, the impact that being at one of these rallies or the Y.O.U event has had on re-energizing youth. Going into South Central region's rally this summer, I had one Regie officer. And then, I kept saying to the sponsors, hey, do you have anybody with leadership experience? And after that rally, there was one young man who is just so charismatic and has so much leadership abilities that he's now my other Regie. So I now have 2 Regies for that region. And I saw at Great Lakes region, I went to their rally this year, 2 of the kids who were at IY this year are now Regies for the region. And so it just takes them getting back and experiencing that and understanding, oh, that's what that role is about. And then they get energized. And so I think, Ed, I love your idea about going to different regional events, getting that interconnection going. I think that's great. But I really think that the more we have these experiences for these kids, the more the excitement's going to grow. And so as long as we stay excited, it's there.
That's great. It's a slight tangent. I know when I was in Y.O.U, I really enjoyed seeing past regional officers and past international officers that were like real adults, out and whatever. And so I don't know if that's still a thing that's interesting. I am now a 42-year-old man who has no idea what teenagers want, but I think bringing back people to tell stories, not only of the Y.O.U, of our Y.O.U experience, but also what it prepares you for, and what it allows you to do in life when you have these sets of tools that, the corporate world pays a lot of money to try and figure out how to create a good community and wellness and all these things that Y.O.U just sort of naturally imbued us with. Anyway, there's a lot to present back, and I'm finally at the position where I'm not embarrassed of my life enough that I could actually do that. So I think those kinds of things are great because they're, we have gotten some alumni energy and getting some past, there's particular power, I think, in past Regies and past internationals. And I will someday learn to call them indies, but it's really been hard. But anyway, so that's my 2 cents on that, is that there's sort of a way to complete the loop a little bit with for content at these events to try to give them a little bit more zhuzh, maybe, or add to their amazing already existing zhuzh.
Awesome. All right, we are gonna start wrapping it up. Okay, come on. All right, so if you have other thoughts that you wanted in our document, that's great. This is, hold on just a second to get back to Canva. Okay. I am screen sharing. Okay, I'm just everywhere, guys, or people, not to, All right, here we go. Back to our presentation. The host has highlighted your video for everyone. Oh, great. Okay, I think this is not the right presentation. Oh, joy. Okay, well, all right, so I'm gonna stop sharing and we will, all right. Okay, so our next event is in March. We have 3 conversations we're doing. It is, I think, March 23rd. It's on our website. What we're going to be doing there, we will have breakout rooms. I'll even say we will have breakout rooms, Linda. No, but seriously, apologize for not having those this time. We will have breakout rooms, and what we'll be doing at the next one is really working on coming together and creating teams. And I think I have it as March 3rd, but I think it's actually March 23rd. Fun. It's not perfect on our website. But anyway, and then actually what I'll do real quick is Rachel was going to be sharing with us a little bit about Next Gen and ambassadors. You have about, I don't want to say a minute, but a minute, and then we'll pray out. And go ahead. Or there, I think I've shared the screen. Okay.
Amazing. Thank you, Betsy. So I'm going to like blaze through this real quick, you guys. So I'm really excited about a lot of the things that we've been talking about today, because it kind of reinforces some of what has already kind of conglomerated in my ideas for the program for Next Gen. So this is the idea for Next Gen, and that is down here. We've got spirit groups at the bottom, which is kind of a continuation of the same format of Y.O.U. They've got small group connectedness and like a consistent community, right? And they can actually move from that spirit group into other spirit groups in the congregation if the church supports that program, or they can stay in their Next Gen spirit group. There's also this ambassadors program, and I want to talk to you guys a little bit about that. Can you switch to the next slide? Sweet. So this is the age flow chart. And ambassadors, you'll see it actually starts at the age 16. So it's going to be leadership skills and cultural sensitivity training and outreach training for young people. It'll have its own training events is the vision. And they'll be able to visit other chapters and help bolster other chapters and visit other regions' rallies and help bolster those rallies. And the idea is that they create their own goal for the year for their ambassadorship. And that could be interfaith, it could be within unity, it could be within their own community, it could be internationally if they want it to be. But I love the idea of young people being able to kind of revitalize Y.O.U. from within. There's also a capstone trip, the Love Light, the big arrow there, the Love Light Project is something that we have picked up from Robin Goff's ministry. It's the exchange program with the South African youth, and are designing it to be a more equally balanced, inclusive program where those young people over there that are now leadership, that are planning those events over there, are part of the ambassadorship group, and they join us in our calls, and they're able to join us for events and possibly even lead some of ambassador training at maybe an international event that kind of tags on to the beginning of Y.O.U. so that there's ambassador training and then it flows right into the Y.O.U. event, and also a Next Gen Unity ambassadors program as well. So there's a bridge between Y.O.U. and Next Gen with this program. What we are looking for right now is we need people that can support the youth ambassador program, and as well as the Y.O.U. themselves. I know chapters are looking for Y.O.U. sponsors. I was so inspired at the Youth Ministry Summit this weekend or this week that I was like, I'm going to be a Y.O.U. sponsor again. And I was like, I'm insane. I'm working 4 jobs. That's not a thing. But I like, maybe what I can do is show up and like help support training sponsors or something. So whatever there is for you to do with that, I encourage you to do it. You can contact me. You can contact Julie Core. If you are interested in the ambassador program, contact me. If you're interested in Next Gen or leadership with Next Gen, contact me. We need people, we need good people in the regions right now. If you are, whatever, just contact us. You can rgaither@unity.org or youngadult@unity.org.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, we're gonna wrap this up. It is March 23rd. Save the date next year, same time. It'll be Zoom. We're gonna create volunteer teams to help us support this vision. Oh, hold on real quick. The conversation overview, the crowdsourced document's gonna close November 17th. The video will be available about that time, and the document itself will be available December 1st. Those resources will be on our website. That's coming up. All right. Quick closing prayer. Real quick, we will breathe in together. And we'll exhale. Thank you, God, for all of this connection, for bringing us together, for our focus, and for our peace. And so it is. Amen. All right. Thank you all, and good night.